CSZ D&I Talks features the use of adult language and discussion of serious topics that may be new for certain viewers. Please be advised.
Classy.
I have a cat too. I have two cats, so yeah, I know the feeling.
I have 3 dogs, so it's plenty of that. That's my life now. Let's do it. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to another episode of Comedy Sports Chicago's D&I Talks with your host, myself, Luis Cortez. I'm a longtime comedy sports player, having played both in Chicago and in Los Angeles, and I now serve as our Director of Diversity and Inclusion here in Chicago. We started this show a few months back, not only to introduce everyone out there to our ensembles, but also to their stories and their experiences. Most of the time, we only get to experience these performers in kind of like performer mode when they're on stage, but obviously they are well-rounded individuals, well-rounded human beings who have had many different sort of experiences. And so we use this presentation as a way to get their stories out there, make it not so in the dark, make these conversations a lot more normal. So when something does happen, we're all equipped to have these sort of conversations, which is kind of the point in the first place. Today, I am joined by another one of our Rec League members. I've been trying to sit down with many more of our Rec League performers, since they are the up and coming performers of the theater, and see how their experiences have been so far, especially over the last year or so, since we had to transfer online. But today I am joined by one of our Rec Leaguers. He is a member of the team Snow Joke, which is directed, of course, by Charisse Johnson. Please welcome James Macapagal.
Everybody, thanks, Luis.
Of course, thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited that you're here. I know I've watched your shows and I've watched you play, but I haven't officially gotten to like sit down and chat with you. So I was very excited when we actually got the opportunity to schedule something. Tell you what, why don't we just start off with, why don't you give us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and where your improv journey started. Let's take it from there.
Sure. Well, hi, everybody. I'm James Macapagal. Rec Leaguer, Comedy Sports School alum and performer in a few different teams at Comedy Sports. I'm from Chicago originally, born and raised in the city, in Chicago, the city of Chicago.
What neighborhood?
I actually grew up, I actually was born literally not too far from where Comedy Sports, the theater, actually is at Illinois Masonic Hospital, which is now I think like Advocate Illinois Masonic.
Okay.
Hospital, not literally like born like next to the theater, like on the curb or anything, but like I was born in Lakeview, and then I went to grade school in Lakeview. Shout out Mount Carmel Academy. What's up? Catholic school down the street, Belmont and Halsted. So I went to grade school there and high school in the city as well at this high school called St. Ignatius, which is like kind of down in the UIC area.
Yeah.
Again, Catholic schools. What's up? Catholic parents, whatever.
Me too, Catholic parents.
Catholicism, what up? So that was fun. But yeah, I'm from Chicago. But my parents are Filipino. I'm Filipino American, but they were born in the Philippines, and they came to Chicago in the 80s with my older sister, who's was born there but came to Chicago with them in the early 80s and stuff. So that's kind of like the beginning of that kind of journey there. And they, I kind of joke around with my dad. I've asked him a few times about, as I've gotten older, about their kind of story, their immigration story, and just their experience, with whatever, with America and all that stuff. And I always joke around with them, like, why did you choose Chicago of all places, coming from the Philippines? Like, one of the most tropical, beautiful places in the world, to Chicago, which is probably one of the coldest places ever. So, it's, but I love Chicago, and I'm pretty proud to be part of the Chicago comedy community, as they call it.
What did your
Yeah.
dad actually give you an answer? Did he tell you why Chicago?
Yeah, so he actually had some family here already
Oh,
before
okay.
he came
Great.
here. So I think it was just easy, I think he had a job lined up and all that stuff. But I do have an aunt, my dad's sister on his side that moved to LA. And I was like, why didn't you do what Tita Elby did? That was she went to LA, you went to Chicago. And it was like always a fun conversation to have that. So
So when did you start dipping your toe into improv? Were you like a theater kid before that, or was this like your first delve into theater stuff?
like growing up in the city in Chicago, improv and comedy and in the arts in general really sort of have this uh pull on the whole city. So I hadn't really like in grade school I'd done like maybe one or like a school play or something like that. I got asked to do one, and then in high school I did theater. I because of that experience in eighth grade, I got interested in that. In high school, I did theater in the theater club, and then by a roundabout way, got into improv and writing and comedy. I did like a teen improv camp at Second City, which it sounds exactly how a teen. It was exactly how a teen improv camp probably sounds. There's a lot of ripping off of like Anchorman and like SNL and
Yep.
just
Yep.
just yes.
I taught high school improv. I know
Oh yes.
exactly whatever was the fun quote from Saturday Night Live that weekend. You better believe I would be hearing it.
Oh yes. So many. Yeah, a lot of you know just ripping off mainstream stuff. But it was like a good experience with there. And then I did improv, like an improv class there, which was a very fun experience. Actually, not to not trying to sound like sarcastic or anything like that, but it was a really good experience. I enjoyed it. And then, you know, it's kind of funny, like I just kind of fell off. I never continued with it. And I always wanted to. And then, life happens and you go on. And then like I went to college and, became an adult kind of. And about 5 years ago, on my like 25th birthday, I was like, you know what? I haven't done improv and I really enjoyed it. I'm just gonna do it. So I picked it up again and started class at the Annoyance Theater next to Comedy Sports, and that was like the beginning of that. And then throughout the last 5 years, I've just kind of done more improv, and here I am at Comedy Sports.
And have you managed to play on like any sort of long-term team aside from rec league?
Yeah. I started a group with my friends called Club Asia,
Okay.
which is a lot of Asian American, Pacific Islander, and South Asian, Middle Eastern identifying performers there. That was like a couple years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago. It's just sort of a thing like, hey, we all do comedy and we're all the Asian people doing comedy. Why don't we make an improv team? And that's kind of how it started. So that's probably my longest running team. And then I did, yeah, obviously rec league. I was in the Herald pool at IO, RIP, back in the day, aka last year, and then performed just randomly around at other theaters like Annoyance, the Crowd, all that kind of stuff. So
Did Club Asia have a home? Like, did it have a home base, or were you just kind of like wherever we could book the team?
it was pretty much wherever we booked team,
Okay.
wherever would have us. Yeah.
And was it
Yeah.
a set, like was it a set cast, or were you always like recruiting? Was there someone always like, oh, I met this person, we need to bring them on the team, or was it just like it's always the eight of us?
No, we added more people, and like I think we started with like 6 people, and then we actually held like auditions and added more
Okay.
people, and I grew like you know and then we also had a sketch show actually. I kind of forgot about this because of the pandemic, but that was like the last show I did. It was last February 2020, we had like a 4-week sketch show at Second City where we wrote and did all that kind of stuff. And that was probably the last in-person show I did. I've done in a year and a half, basically. So
how would you describe the experience of getting to be part of a team like that? Like of a team that understands not just like your pop culture references, but your cultural references too. Those sort of things that normally in a regular show, you'd kind of have to have a qualifier at the end, like, and this is what this means. But they're like, oh, no, we don't need that. We got it from word one. Let's go. Like, how would you describe that to someone who maybe hasn't been on a team like that before?
I mean, not to get kind of cheesy improv-y, but it really is like a gift. It is just a real understated gift of being able to perform with other improvisers who, they know what you're talking about. The minute you're talking, you're on stage, you're going to drop a reference, you're going to say something that, is more about your identity, your Asian identity, or anything that's personal to you, and they'll pick it back up and they'll run with it. I'm actually thinking of a show, an improv scene in particular, where me and my friend on the team, Michael Van Pham, I think he's also part of the Comedy Sports universe. And anyway, we had done a scene. I think he was saying something so he's Vietnamese, and he was like, I think the line was like, tell me your Asian name, which is a very interesting question, because it's a lot of, Asian Americans have, like an Americanized name and then their name in their native language, and it's funny because he asked me that on stage in a scene, and I was like, I don't have one, and I genuinely don't. And I like genuinely responded very honestly, like, I don't have one, dude. I'm Filipino. We don't kind of do that thing. And it was just a really tender, like genuine moment. And it was really very funny. And then we actually wrote it down and made it into a sketch for the show last February. So it's like stuff like that where you're like, I don't think I'd get that scene anywhere else besides with this group, these people, with other, AAPI former PI performers and that kind of thing. So, it's very, it's a blessing for sure, I think.
I mean, yeah, no, definitely. And I know exactly what you mean in regards to like the specificity of the references that are being made, where you're just like, oh no, I am right there with you. And it really does. I think that is a great way to describe it. It is a sensation that it does not come along very often in regards to like people of color in the improv world, where that sort of like, oh, like it's like an exhale on stage that it reverberates very, very deep. So yeah, and it's something like, I'm not trying to get cheesy about it, but yeah, no, I totally get that. And so, well, how long was it before y'all came up with that idea to like, let's make this team, like from when you kind of came back to it 5 years ago to let's do this team? What was like the catalyst for that?
Well, I think it maybe had been about like 6 months to a year. I was just kind of doing improv, randomly as like a freelancer, I guess, like a freelance improviser, just kind of looking for a team, looking to play wherever. And then I think there was a show, someone put together a showcase for, I think they want to do something at IO where it was like a one-off show, but it was performers of color and diversity and groups. And then they put together teams for this particular show. And then I think we got kind of by happenstance put together in this improv group. And then we decided, hey, this is a great idea. We had a good time. Let's kind of run with it. Actually, I think it was through a Facebook group called like Chicago Diverse Comedy Community or something like
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's exactly what it was. So it was
Someone
like,
posted something on there, and then here we
yes,
are.
exactly. Yeah. I was like, hey, we're putting a show together for performers of color. If you want to join, let us know. And that was kind of it. And then we got put together on this team. And then I think, yeah, we decided to keep going with it. With that, and it came up with the name and the kind of our thing. So.
And would you say that it was more of a like, was it a response to anything, or just more of a labor of love of just like, we just want to play? Because I know there's certain people like, we put ourselves together because we couldn't get on teams and we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that, and so here we are. Or was it just more of like so like everybody else in here, like it's just the love of the game, we just want to get in there with some like-minded people?
For sure. I think it was a little bit of both, where uh, you know, we we enjoyed performing with each other, and we performed each other before and all that. But then also, yeah, there was a little bit of like, well, we'll just start our own team then, kind of a thing where like maybe other opportunities didn't come our way as performers, um, you know, and there is that sense of like, well, fine, if I won't have that, if that opportunity isn't right for me, I'll just make my own and we'll just do our own thing. So I think it's kind of really a little bit of both of like, hey, we have a good opportunity here where we have a group we like. Why don't we just do what a lot of other groups do and also have our own thing and just kind of do improv, and do our own kind of style of Asian American comedy and improv and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it was a little bit of both.
So let me ask you, in regards to being able to present that Asian American perspective in the improv world of comedy, despite the push that some of these theaters are starting to make in regards to like diversity and inclusion, and some of the ones that tried and are now gone, but Asian Americans are probably one of the groups that are least included in those conversations.
Oh yeah.
Why do you think that is? They're obviously here in the community. We have teams like yours. They're around town just like everybody else. Why do you think they're the ones that we mentioned, one of the groups that we mentioned the least?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's that. There's the rub. That's the question. But I think, there's a lot there. And I think there's a lot of things that have contributed to that, both in general with Asian American identity and discrimination and racism and that kind of stuff. And also with just, like the comedy community as a whole, performing arts, and I kind of get into that one. So, but I definitely think there's a sense of like the mild minority myth that goes around, and it drips into every bit of Asian American identity, especially comedy and performing and art. But like in those instances where it's like, oh, there's this idea that people that aren't familiar with the mild minority myth, it's like, well, there are plenty of very successful Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders. They're not discriminated against. They're doing fine. Look at them. They are having an experience that seems to be more equitable or equal than other minority groups, other marginalized groups. So maybe they shouldn't have the opportunities that other communities should have, which is wrong, because at least in my opinion, every group that is, marginalized as a minority group is underrepresented. And I think all minorities in general are underrepresented in the arts and media and a lot of things that plays into that. So I think there's a lot of, like if I'm going to go all the way to something like I'm coming up with like Bowen Yang on SNL. he is the first Asian American performer, cast member, he's still a featured player, which I actually watched episode last week, and I'm like, why is he not a cast member yet? Anyway, I think he got added like 2 or 3 years ago, and he was the first Asian American performer, cast member in the history of the show. And I'm like, the show's been on for 45 years, like, wow. 50 years almost. That's insane. It's like it's a very weird oversight or overlooking that happens, I think, with Asian Americans. And I think it's partly because of that, like the idea that Asian Americans are good or aren't discriminated against, which unfortunately the last year I think has shown that that's not the case and never has been the case. So there's that. And I think that kind of going back to like the art community and comedy and stuff, I think there is this idea that like Asian Americans aren't funny, or they're just not a group that is like thought of as like produce funny artists or stuff like that, which is weird because there's like so many funny Asian comedians in general, not just Asian American, but and yeah, I don't know why. I think that's just kind of a weird, at least in my opinion, there's this sort of idea that, there is a seriousness or not playfulness with Asian culture or Asian American culture that kind of is prevalent too. And yeah, so I think that's kind of a thing that plays into that on why a lot of institutions just don't give Asians a look, AAPI community a look for roles or for opportunities, things like that. So
what would you say, in based off of your experiences as we progress to reopen, what are things that we should be doing in order to make sure that this community is feeling empowered enough to speak up and start creating more of these teams, or whatever it might be, what should we be doing to support that community more?
For sure. One, I think it's great that theaters are, and just in general, I think there's a greater awareness that's happening now for whatever reason, from the year we've had, everything. But I think just putting people in places, like putting people in those opportunities to be examples, to showcase, to break those stereotypes, to dismantle that sort of, all of the whatever, repressive assumptions that happen that are thought of Asian Americans. So whether it's like, putting somebody in in a good role, in a good cast, in a good ensemble and a good team, things like that, and supporting them and surrounding them also with supportive cast members to help them shine. Just, I guess, giving them the opportunity to play, to be themselves is important. And then, I think in general, things like this, letting it's funny because in my day job there are these webinars too that I've been having. I had one today actually, with other, like the company is showcasing other Asian American artists, like performers and writers, and I work at an ad agency, so there's a lot of creative people in there, so there's a spotlight on that. So I think just taking that time to spotlight the Asian American, Pacific Islander, South Asian communities and the people in them and the stories and the artists, and just kind of show that, like, we're out here, and we deserve the same opportunities that everybody has and everyone should get. So
I've always found it so interesting that in order to like start this progress towards more inclusion, one of the first things that we have to do is like acknowledge and spotlight. Like it's hard to move towards it's all of us when you haven't even taken a chance to be like, this guy, like just let's take a second. And
Absolutely.
the fact that that's what we have to start with, you know, like when we do our you know, spotlight weekends is the way that I call them. It's in my mind because I'm like, we can't move towards this inclusion point when we still haven't even taken the time to acknowledge that they're here and are part of the company. Like that's step one. That is such a simple step too.
Yeah, you know, and you know, I'm not knocking like the awareness and education and the talking about it like we're doing right now. Like it's very important too. But there is like, you know, I don't know. I think we can talk about it. We can create awareness and have talks like that. But then there's also like, well, here we are. Like there's let's put somebody in that position to be the example, to be the product of the awareness and the talking and the conversations we're having. And it's like, all right, we've laid the groundwork now. Let's put something in the ground. Let's put down the stones, start building up what we need to build up. So I think there is that. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like there's I funny in like an ironic way where, you know, yeah, I think about this a lot too, where it's like you know, I think about past movies or past TV shows I've watched, and I just kind of think like, well, that character could have been an Asian character, you know, or like, you know, there's this, or I've been watching like How I Met Your Mother and Friends, like as my like comfort shows during the pandemic, and I'm like, why did they all have to be, you know, like white characters? They could have some of them could have been Asian characters, or they could have been black characters or Latinx characters or something like that. And
I mean,
it's just things like that.
You know what Friends was based on, right?
Yeah, it's based on
Living Single.
Yeah.
Based on Living Single. So it's based like they saw this African American show and went, this is great. But you know what would make it better?
Right.
Is if everyone was white.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
No, opposite.
No. Or like not, you know, it's like, well, not everybody, you know.
Yeah.
You can you can change, I guess.
They gotta have friends, right? Where are their other friends?
Do they all have to have white friends? Do they all have to have, yeah, you know?
So let me ask you, you have been you've been through the Comedy Sports School. Now you sit as part of our rec league on the team Snow Joke. So you did your Second City time, you did your Annoyance classes as well, and you spent time there. What brought you over to Comedy Sports?
Well, I just had a lot of friends who were doing, I think back in the day, it's called the House Team program, just House Teams Rec League. That kind of the same idea, same house shows, house ensembles kind of a thing.
Same show, different name.
Yeah, same show, different name. And they had just had like a really good time and a really good experience, and just kind of talking about it. And then, you know, I was, just kind of looking for something, you know, I think performing a lot of, you know, long form or improv as a whole in Chicago, it gets kind of old really quickly. And, you know, you kind of end up doing the same scenes a lot. And then, you know, at a certain point, like, I just want to have fun and like laugh and like say stupid shit on stage, you know, like, and enjoy myself. That's kind of why I did improv, why I do improv now. And I think Comedy Sports like encapsulates that, you know, whether it's the short form games, I think it's that. I think it's also the ensemble, the people, the culture. I think there's a lot of emphasis on fun. So that's kind of why I just kind of stuck with it and have been just returning back to Comedy Sports too. And I think also, you know, not to tie everything to the pandemic, into the quarantine and stuff. But I had taken, I mean, everybody has, but like taken a long break from improv. Like I said, like my last show was in February of 2020. And then of course, in that last, for the next 10 months, nothing. I really hadn't done anything. And I had kind of shied away from doing virtual improv and virtual comedy sports, for my own kind of self-care or whatever. I just wasn't really feeling it, and I was sort of a little sad about losing live improv and that kind of thing. But I had got Charisse had reached out to me and asked if I was interested in performing for this latest term, the one that's wrapped up from January to April or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'll just give it a go. I could use some fun and some enjoyment in this time period we live in. So, and it's been a really great experience just with virtual improv and doing it, through Zoom and stuff. So it's this emphasis on fun for sure.
So essentially, you were playing pretty steadily up until March of 2020, where you decided to like, well, I'm not feeling the virtual improv thing right now. So you took about 10 months off, and then you came back around January for the latest round of Rec League. So tell me, what were those first few like online improv experiences like? What do you think now that it's been 4 or 5 months? Like, what is it feeling like? Obviously, we're hoping to reopen sometime soon, but virtual improv seems like it's sticking around. Tell me what you thought of the process.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I'll admit, like, before I had signed up to do the latest virtual Rec League, I was in the camp of like, well, the improv is in person. Like, I need to. Is improv really improv over the internet, like that kind of a thing? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna sip my tea and just everyone's having fun.
Pontificate.
Yes. What is the nature of improv if we're not looking at each other face to face in person? And which is wrong. I will, I was wholeheartedly wrong about that. And I think, it's, improv is, and I think comedy, art, anything, it is what we all make of it. It's the people that create it. It's not the venue or the place or the stage or whatever, the medium. It's just the people that enjoy it. So I had kind of I'd had that moment of like, I'm not gonna do this. And then, by the end of last year, I was like, oh, I kind of want to do this again. Like, I miss improv. Like, I need to do this, especially from doing it for so regularly for a long time, before we went into quarantine and lockdown. It's like, this is a regular thing in my life, a big part of my life. So yeah, I kind of did, I'm going to go back to the cheesy improv lessons life, but I said, yes, and as you do, I'm going to go sit in a corner right now and contemplate that. But I said yes and to, the offer to join Rec League, and the first couple rehearsals, getting used to playing the games online through, just without that, the kind of physical cues or physical things you're used to, like, having a timer or having, playing a line game without having, or being next to somebody playing a line game or something like that, having to like sequence people.
Laughter.
Yeah. And it was all fine, I think I might have left my camera on by accident during a show, the very first Rec League show, and I hadn't noticed it. And then it was just like some guy on the couch watching until someone was like, turn my camera off. Like, I think till Katie turned my camera off. So I think people just played with some dude on the couch.
Just hanging out.
Just hanging out until, that kind of like Zoom guy, like, turn your camera off, and you're just like, what? So that was embarrassing. I thought about that
It's so
for 7
funny what a
days
long way
after.
that stuff has come. Like I remember before like 2 years before the pandemic, we were trying to do a meeting and someone was like, what about Zoom? And of course we were all like, Qua? What is this Zoom?
What?
And we tried it and we were like, this is so complicated. Forget it. We're not doing this. And then cut to quick jump 2 years later and everyone's like, we got to master this and we got to master this fast.
Oh yeah.
So where are you hoping to see yourself, both improv world, comedy sports world? Like are you thinking, like, are you eyeing that ensemble? Are you thinking you're wanting to head back to Second City? What are you feeling? A little bit of both.
You know, I definitely am eyeing like sticking with comedy sports for sure, and doing minor league ensemble if I have the chance, and staying with that. And I think just going back to like my what we're talking about before, I kind of reevaluated my like improv career goals and that kind of thing, because I'd been a part of the whole like I need to get the showcase, and then I'm gonna get on a Herald team, and then I'm gonna go on to write for Saturday Night Live, and then become rich and famous and do that thing. And that, if anything, this last year has kind of showed like, is that really important? Like, is that really what this is about? So I really am just sort of in it to have fun and enjoy myself. And I think comedy sports for sure, I enjoy myself very much so. So I think I'm sticking with that. And then, yeah, wherever, it's like it's a new comedy world we live in now. So I don't really know too of like what the next chapter holds, if it's like, going back to doing a sketch show or whatever, if it's another, whatever's the like theater to be, I'm kind of like a little over that kind of thing, and just trying to enjoy myself for as long as I can enjoy improv while I can still do it and stuff. And
I mean, I think you're very right. It is a brave new world, and the way we approached it before doesn't seem like it's going to be the way to approach it now.
yeah,
It's funny because for a long time, I think one of the things that we fight, especially within the world of D&I, is that concept of like, but this is the way we've always done it. And just yesterday or the day before, I was thinking to myself, like, the age of this is the way we've always done it is done.
oh
Like,
yeah,
that's not a valid reason anymore, because everything is different now. The world is different. The way we talk to each other is different. The way we're just around people is different. We were just talking about the fact that like we all watched so many movies over the pandemic, and anytime there was like a crowded movie theater or a dining room that had too many people in it, immediately we're all like, what are they doing? It's
oh
just
yeah,
like, life is different. That doesn't fly anymore. So what is that going to mean for us? And
yeah,
what avenues are about to open up in regards to more diversity, more inclusion, like, and more importantly, how can the theaters themselves support that stuff more? What are
yeah,
the things that we could be doing to make sure that these people who want to be here feel like A, they're welcomed here, and B, staying here is a good idea?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think just recognizing that, and like, the uh you know I think comedy has changed a little bit too, with regard like what people find funny now. There are a lot of things I think, from watching like a lot of TV and movies the last year and a half, like Friends and How I Met Your Mother and those kind of old sitcoms, like a lot of jokes I'm just like, this is not funny. Like this is, or I don't think people would find this funny anymore, or this is, there's a better way of, maybe not saying not funny, but like there's a better way that this joke could come across. I think audiences are kind of looking for that kind of smart and informed and uh, you know uh, compassionate comedy that kind of is, I think, people I think audiences are wanting some of that. And then also, and there's kind of like yeah, and then, with the conversations of diversity and making this more equitable, seeing more representation of people, of their own lives on whatever medium they're looking for. And I think there's, but while before it might have been nice to have, or hey, look at that, that's nice, it's definitely more of like it's a requirement now. This is there needs to be this sort of diversity and representation and emphasis on that. And I feel like if you're not doing that, you're going to look like, the optics of that are going to look like your Friends or How I Met Your Mother from the 90s, where you're like, this is this, they can all, it's just not representative of what people want or what America is or what we hope to be, that kind of thing. So yeah,
And the thing is, How
yeah.
I Met Your Mother is not as old as you think.
Yeah, well, yeah,
How I
that
Met Your
too.
Mother, I think, was like late 2000s.
Yeah, well, I think it ended
Friends was
like,
like Friends reeks of the 90s.
yeah,
But How I Met Your Mother also has that stench of the early 2000s, where like there was some like that punching down sort of comedy before those other groups finally were like, we have feelings too, like
yeah,
those
yeah,
those jokes hurt.
yeah. Like, I don't think that's I just don't think, yeah, that some of those jokes were like thought out of, thought, maybe fleshed out enough, or there wasn't something there to say like, I don't think that's a great joke for 5 white people to be saying,
I mean, just
whatever.
alone, like you look at Friends and a lot of like, there's a lot of homophobic jokes in there that
Yeah,
really just don't fly anymore.
yeah,
And
yeah,
even at the time, it was just kind of like, come on, are you really that insecure?
yeah,
Though, it was the 90s where there was just a very, I mean, this is a completely different conversation, but there was a very binary approach to that sort of sexuality. It was like either you are or you aren't. There's nothing in between. So
oh
of
yeah,
course, any sort of illusion one way or the other, people were like,
yeah,
so, but
yeah,
that's a whole other conversation, a whole other world. But I totally understand what you're saying, and that like those groups just don't let that stuff fly anymore. And now those groups are the ones that are like, we don't have to be just the
yeah,
best friends. We could have our own shows too. And
yeah,
so now we're seeing a lot more of that. And again, there is that feeling of like, I get every joke that you are making. And you're not even like having to go that deep into the explanation. Like,
yeah,
this is amazing. Just this week alone, I've had 2 interactions with people where they just broke into Spanish as the default.
yeah,
How does that like, do you speak Spanish? Because I do too. It was just like they saw me and went, oh, Spanish?
yeah,
And
yeah,
because they were like these people of color that recognized me as a person of color, there was very much this, anyone else, I would have been like, hey. But because they were like me, I was just like, thank you. I do speak Spanish. Thank you.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's what I think a lot of people are looking for, or whether they identify as, the group of like, you know, um, a joke that is really specific to, for me, like if I'm Filipino and there's a lot of other Filipino improvisers, well, let's kind of land on kind of, like kind of making fun of our parents and like that kind of thing, and the culture and the kind of idiosyncrasies of Filipino American culture that we appreciate, we love, and we find funny and stuff like that. And maybe someone isn't like Filipino, but they can kind of feel the energy from that. Like it's a very genuine comedy. It's like a like if Friends is punching down and it's kind of like, oh wow, this is kind of like negative comedy, if you want to call it, or like I'm a like dark side comedy or whatever you want to call it. Like if it puts off like an energy like that, I feel like the comedy that he is coming out, or I'm starting to see more of, and there's definitely more emphasis on that kind of like, where we're starting to showcase more very personal experiences that are, yeah, I'm thinking of like, there's a Master of None episode where I think the two main characters showcase their parents' experiences as immigrants coming to this country. I think it's like one of the seasons in there. And you know, like one of the characters, he's Chinese American, and his dad, I think he asks him to go get some chicken from the grocery store, and he like kind of gripes about it or something like that. And then his father is like, I had to like kill chickens in our village, like before I came to America. Like I think it's something like that, and it's just kind of like, that's probably a very poor example. I'd like
No,
to
but
tell
I get what you're saying. My
you know?
dad loves, my dad is he's a pediatrician, and he studied in Mexico, and he loves to tell me about the time that he was doing some of his residencies. And in Mexico, when you do that, you go to these smaller villages and, you know, outside of Mexico City to help and do your residencies. But I guess where he was, there were like some, you know, guerrilla groups in the jungle in the area that did not like that he was there. So he's
Oh
like,
wow.
one night, like there were like footsteps on the roof, and next thing he knows, like some guys pop in and they're like, we gotta go, like
Oh wow.
now. And then like ran him out of there, and
Oh my
he was
god.
like, yeah, so, and I'm like, okay, Dad, okay, someone tried to kill you, I get it.
Dad was the victim of a paramilitary group trying to illustrate, you know, Western medicine.
But
No
every
big
once in a
deal.
while, he'll pop out one of these stories, and it is because he's one of these, and maybe you have the same experience with your dad,
Oh
but like
yes, I have
they're
exactly the same experience.
stoic, kind of serious, doesn't talk a lot. But when they do, they'll occasionally burst something out where you're like, what the hell? Why am I
Oh
just
yeah.
hearing that now?
I I have so many of those. I've had so many of those too, recently too. But yeah, like, you know, stuff like that where, you know, and yeah, like I had one where my dad kind of explained more about his like his immigration story here when he came to Chicago in like 1983, 84, that time frame. And he was the first person that came here. Like he came first, and then my mom and my sister came second. But he tells the story of how like he came here in like January of 1983, and he didn't have a coat, and he landed at like O'Hare here in Chicago from the Philippines, from like Manila.
Yeah.
Like it's like summer-ish there, you know, every day is summer, but it's like the hotter rainy season in like January, December, January.
Mm-hmm.
And like January here is of course like the coldest month ever in, you know, in winter. So, and then like, yeah, just like a random story how, yeah, he didn't have a coat, and then he had to take the bus because there was before, or he didn't know the blue line, or he didn't know if maybe it was before taking the blue line was a thing or something like that. So he had to take the bus, and he had to meet my uncle in like some old hotel downtown, and like he gave him like an old like construction jacket with like a bunch of paint on it. And he's telling me this, I'm just like, this is like an opus. This is like this should be like the opening, if I ever get around to it, like the opening chapter of like your life story. Like
Yeah.
this is a story, you know. So yeah, and I think those are the kind of things that like yeah, I think people want to learn more about, or I would hope people do, and that, you know, the experiences that immigrants have, and just people of color in general, that kind of yeah, unifying experiences to do that, you know. And then kind of go back to the example about like, tell me your Asian name, and that kind of sketch scene we wrote, you know, other people, you know, might have a different experience who are Asian, maybe they're you know, have a different ethnic identity, nationality, and their experience is similar but different. And there's comedy in that, and there's a little bit of interest in that. And, you know, I think it makes for interesting, yeah, it's like the human experience. People want to see that. So hopefully that will come across more as the world turns and things change. And, you know, I would think people are dying to go see theater and art and things in person or in general. So maybe things will open up that way too. So
they're dying to watch it and we're dying to do it. So it can only lead to good stuff if we all just keep following
yes.
our mask mandates and get it all squared away hopefully soon. James, believe it or not, we have come to the end of our time. This has been
Wow.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on anything that we talked about today? I definitely want to have you back as you continue your comedy sports journey here, but for now, with everything that we talked about today.
I think one, I just want to like kind of say like my final thoughts, just like I feel very optimistic just with this conversation we've had and just talking about things like what we talked about. And there's still a lot of work and things to be done, but I feel better. I feel good that there is this emphasis on, especially I think, for Asian Americans too, and especially whether it's this month or just in general with everything that's going on. I think there's a lot of good things that could come, and there's hope out there. I think is kind of what I want to say to whoever is listening or whoever who is thinking about stuff like this, because I think about it every now and then, and what the future of our community looks like. So while it's kind of uncertain, there's like uncertainty. I think there's a lot there that can happen and will happen for sure. So anyway, yeah, I feel good about it. So I feel good.
Good. I love it that you do, and I'm happy that you're spending time at our theater. And anything that we can do, or I personally can do to help keep you around and support you more in everything that you're doing, please let us know. For everybody out there, thank you for watching. This has been a fantastic DNI Chats. Do me a favor, find us on Twitch. We are Comedy Sports Network. We are CSZ Chicago. You can also find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. We have programming 6 days a week. Check out our website, czchicago.com, for all the information. And we will see you next time here at Comedy Sports Chicago's DNI Talks.